Hello, and welcome to this WebSphere Support Technical Exchange. My name is Paul Brett, and the subject of this video is using WebSphere Transformation Extender with OSR files for XML validation on the ZOS platform. I want to thank you all for viewing this video, which I hope will be the first of many on my new YouTube channel. I sincerely hope that you find this session both interesting and informative. Okay, so on the agenda for today, I'll briefly explain why you would use OSR files over using standard XSD schemas for XML validation on the ZOS platform. Then there will be a short demonstration of using this technique in both ZOS Batch via 3270 terminal emulation and then ZOS USS Unix System Services via a command line interface. I'll then round off with a quick summary. Okay, so let's start with the why. You have your XML and you have your XSD schema. Why bother with compiling the XSD into yet another format? Well, when you start to use an OSR file on ZOS, it invokes the XML system services underlying technology. Normal CPU use is minimized, and the bulk of the validation work is offloaded to specialized processors referred to as ZIIP and ZAAP. All this means you should be getting significant performance enhancements and cost improvements by lowering CPU usage, measured in MIPS. I'm now going to switch between various applications to give a demonstration of using OSR files for XML validation. I will announce each application on first use. Some applications I use will have other alternatives available, such as my FTP client. Some applications will be required, such as the WTX Design Studio. Here we have the WebSphere TX Design Studio. As you can see, I've opened a fresh workspace and there are no projects in the navigator. To remedy this, I right-click in the Extender Navigator and choose New Extender Project. Give the project a nice simple name. We'll use XML_test. Let's go back, capitalize that, XML test. There we go. Okay, expand that and you will see the different elements of this project. The first thing we need to create is a schema file. So let's right click on Schema Files and choose New XML Schema. We'll give the schema a name, test.xsd, and then we click on the project where we want it to reside. Okay, the schema is opened in Design View. Down the bottom you'll see that you've also got a source view to look at the raw schema. Switch back to Design View and start populating it. So let's right click and add the root element. Oops, spell it right, root, okay. And then double click on that to get to the design canvas, and we'll start populating it with some subtypes, child elements. Okay, we'll only add one simple element. It's going to be a text string. We'll call it data. Okay, so that's the schema finished. All we need to do is save that file. Show you this source tab to show that it's populated with a few lines of text there. You've got the root element and the child element of that called data, which is a type string. And we're finished with this schema file, so we'll close that. Next thing we need is an XML input file. So let's right click on XML files and choose New XML file. Let's give it a name, input.xml, choose the project and click Next to continue in the wizard. We're going to choose to create the XML file from the XML schema file. pick the schema file from our project list, and I'm going to leave all these options at their defaults and just let it create stuff. Okay, it's opened up in the raw XML view. I'm just going to change the actual data between the tags to something a little more interesting. Hello world. And that's our XML finished. So we can save and close. Well, next thing we need is a WTX map. So we need to right click on the map files part of the project and choose map source. Give it a nice simple name, test.mms, select the project, click finish, and we have a blank map source file. Right click on test in the outline view to create a new map, which we shall also call test. As you can see, test currently has no input cards. We shall add a new one now. Give the card a simple name in 1. For the type tree, we shall choose the schema that we created earlier. For the type tree root object, we will just pick the top object there, XSD. And finally, for this card, we need to put the input file, which we'll choose as input.xml. I could have selected it, but I decided to type. As you can see, the metadata is set to look for the schema at runtime, and the document verification is set for schema validation. And that's basically this card finished, and in fact this whole map. So what we need to do now is save this file and then click on the build and run buttons, and as you can see, the map completed successfully. Okay, this map builds and runs successfully on Windows. The next step is to take the from the map menu, choose to build the map for the z/OS platform. It's just a simple entry on the list of options there. Okay, that's the map also built for the z/OS platform. And we're finished now with the Design Studio. We'll close that and move on to the next step. Okay, here we have my file copying program. As you can see, the main application is split into two halves. On the left, I have the directory open showing my WTX workspace, and in there you can see all the files we just created and the files that the Design Studio created, such as the compiled map files. Over here on the right, we have a view on my Unix System Services directory, where we're going to do all our testing. The first thing we need to do is to change the copying mode to binary, and we need to copy across the compiled map file, which in this case is test.mvs. We need the XML schema, test.xsd, and finally we need input.xml. The application I'm using here is WinSCP. Other applications, of course, are available. So we have our 3 files in our target directory ready for testing. Right, what we have here is a telnet window where you can see that I have connected to my z/OS Unix System Services environment. I've logged in, as you can see, and I'm currently sat there at my home directory. So the first thing to do is to find the product directory and run the setup script. The setup script is run with ./setup, and as you can see, it is reported that a bunch of variables have been set. Okay, now we're changed to our testing directory, and as you can see, in there we've got the files that we transferred earlier, input.xml, compiled map test.mvs, and the schema test.xsd. The command server should run this map straight away with no issues. So let's give that a try now. We'll just call the command server with the compiled map, and there we go. As we can see, map completed successfully. So the schema validation has been carried out and it's just executed. Let's just run that one more time. This time I'm going to turn on tracing and auditing, I think. Produce a few files. Let's have a look at those files now. Yep, you can see we've got there test.log, the audit log, test.mtr, the trace, and there's an extra XML file there, that's the Xerxes trace. Let's have a look at the content of the audit log. Okay, as you can see in the message tags there, it says map completed successfully. In the source report you can see that it's read 255 bytes. Nothing surprising in the audit log. Let's have a look at the trace. At the end of the trace, input 1 was valid. Nothing surprising in there either. As you can see, in between the apostrophes at the data offsets, the content is actually unreadable on this platform, and it doesn't matter how you transfer it back to your PC, it's unreadable there. But there is a technique that you can use, a map that I've designed, that will actually make that trace more readable. I'll come back to that later. Okay, I think we should remove some of these files just so we get back to the clean environment before we go on to the next step. So I'm going to remove the log file, I'm going to remove the trace file, and let's get rid of this Xerxes trace as well. So we've got the 3 core files ready to do the next step. Okay, here we are in another application, Reflection FTP this time. I prefer this application for transferring files to my batch environment. On the left you can see that I have the directory pointed to my WebSphere TX Design Studio workspace, and you'll see there I have the test.osr file recently generated in the USS environment and copied across to my PC in binary mode. I also have the input.xml file, the compiled map, and the raw schema. You'll see that I'm set for binary mode transfer, and so I'll transfer those 4 files across to my batch environment now. Input, compiled map, compiled schema, and raw schema. Okay, so that's the 4 files in my batch environment ready to run. Next I shall need to switch to my 3270 terminal emulation program, and here we are. Okay, I go into the submenus 3 and 4 to list the files I have in my batch session. I'll go down and edit my JCL file. Clean up the screen, page down 1, and here we can see that I am loading as my step lib the 8413 version of the command server. My map is specified is map to run. My input file dataset is specified as input, and the XSD file specified as schema. As you can see, there are the command overrides to pass in input and output. I did make a slight change to the compiled version of the map, which I'm about to submit. I added the DD schema into the metadata area just to make things easier. Okay, the job was submitted and has completed with a return code of 8. That's usually a good sign, but we'll go to the output job queue and look at the latest job. Go down to the DTX log file there and view it. Down to the bottom, up a little bit. There we go. At the bottom of the screen there you can see map completed successfully. Okay, so that was with the schema. We need to switch back to the JCL now, make a slight change so that we use the OSR file. Back to the top of the JCL. There we go. Currently set to XSD. Little change there to change to OSR. And submit the job again. Job is submitted. And then we see a return code of 8 again. Let's switch to the job output display. Refresh that. Okay, there's 4 jobs in there now. Let's look at that one. Rather than look at the log this time, let's have a look at the XML trace. Let's go to the bottom of that file. down. And there we go, you can see XML parser, XML data is valid. So the map works quite happily with both the schema and the OSR file. In summary then, use an OSR file to leverage the ZIIP and ZAAP accelerated hardware using XML system services to validate that XML as efficiently as possible. Build and test the map on Windows using XSD files. Then, once happy with validation, transfer those XSD files to ZOS and compile them to OSR files. You can use runtime overrides or compile in the OSR setting at design time for the same net effect. Good luck! Thank you all again for tuning in to this presentation and demonstration. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel as I will be posting further content. Follow me on Twitter for hints, tips and general news from the IBM WebSphere Transformation Extender team.